Right. Hello, hello, and welcome to Hygiene Elevated Conversations and Innovations. This morning, I am joined by Jasmin Haley. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, Jasmin. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be interviewed today.
It's always nice when you're on the opposite side. It's such a different perspective when you get to be a guest when you're used to hosting, right?
I would say I used to worry more about it, but I honestly feel like this is just a conversation. I was teasing Olivia because Olivia came on my podcast and she was trying to ask me questions. And I was like, hold up, hold up. Okay, I am the host.
Not
Okay.
how this is working.
Right. So, I teased her about that. It was a great conversation. I know this is going to be another good one. So, yeah, it feels great. I don't have to worry about anything. I could just chill and relax.
Awesome. Well, let's get the conversation started. So,
Yeah.
tell us, we love hearing stories of how hygienists got into dental hygiene and what was their interest in the field.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So, I've been in dentistry for 24 years now, believe it or not. I know I'm looking bad good right now. Okay. I started really, really young. I knew I wanted to be in dentistry specifically. I didn't know that dental hygiene was a career option for me. I wanted to be a dentist, specifically or orthodontist. So for years, I would smile. Everyone compliments me now. A lot of people compliment me for my smile, but for years, I would cover it. I wouldn't smile. My teeth were severely crowded. My mom didn't take us regularly to the dentist. I went when there was caries and teeth needed to be pulled, right?
Yeah.
So I knew that the smile was important. I didn't feel as good. I was teased a lot about it. And so I wanted to be a dentist. And New York City, they had specialized programs in high school where you can become a dental assistant. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't know where I'm going to go. I grew up in a single parent household. No one was really there to direct me and tell me the route to become a dentist. But I said, okay, that's dental. Well, let me go there. And so I went to a specialized high school that had dental assisting. Our teachers were dental hygienists. I was still set on becoming a dentist still. And so I was the first of my six siblings to attempt to go to college. And I knew that my mother was not in a place to support me. And so I decided to go the route of hygiene as a stepping stone to dentistry. I was still set on that. And I was able to complete school by working nights and working these
Mhm.
odd jobs and getting through. It took me longer to get my degree than average person because I didn't have support around that. I had limited support. I did have some support when the going got tough, but I needed to work through school. And so I became a dental hygienist and was going to start working on my prereqs for dental school, and then found out my husband and I were expecting.
But then babies.
Yeah. So I started a family and I love dentistry. I've always loved dentistry, but I think recently I came to terms with, and I mean very fairly recent, that I didn't accomplish the goal of becoming a dentist. For me, I'm the type of personality, I set a path and I'm like, this is where I'm going to go. And my expectations is I'm going to fulfill it. And there was a real hard challenge for me of accepting that the path that I've had in my career is phenomenal.
Mhm.
It's just as amazing. I have done so many things in dental hygiene. I have been in education, I've been in public health, I've been an influencer, I've been professionally speaking. I started my own business and made a business outside of dentistry, like all with the skills and the business acumen that I've been able to create. So I really truly, I think I had to go through a place of maturity too, of really really
Yes.
appreciating dental hygiene, right? I love treating my patients. I love working with them. I'm extremely passionate about dentistry as a whole and to be a part of a team where you feel valued. So that's a long story short of how I've
That
landed in dental hygiene.
there's so much there.
Yeah.
There is so much there to unpack.
Yeah.
First off, way to make such a positive change about things that you were self-conscious about.
Mhm.
My husband has a similar story. He didn't become a dentist,
Mhm.
but he was very bullied in school because of his teeth, and his parents had to pull him out of school, and they did not put him in braces until he was an adult. Once we got married, and I'm not talking 20s, I'm talking late 30s. And he was kind of like, "Oh, should I bother?" And I'm like, "Yes, it is never too late to look and feel good. Like, yes, you should do this." And
Oh,
it was one of the best decisions he ever made. Not just because I'm a hygienist and that's going to drive me
yeah,
crazy, but he feels so much better. Like smiling in his pictures before versus after, it's a game changer. So I love that that was your response of, I don't want other people to go what I went through. I want to help other people.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, I have letters where you know how you write the college essays, and I talked about that of like how I knew that it would help people. What a lot of people don't know. I don't think I've ever talked about this on a podcast.
At
But don't
first.
quote me on that. Don't quote me on that because it's dozens. But what most people don't know is that at 16, I started working as a dental assistant. The minimal wage at that time was $5 an hour.
Hmm.
I was getting paid 10. This was the only way I started getting the Timbs. For those from the New York area, I started getting Timberlands, which are boots that were in. I started buying Nikes for myself. Like there was things that I desired, and one of them was straightening my teeth. And my mom was not in a position to help me get braces. What people don't know is that behind the scenes, I worked out a deal with the dentist I was working with to get braces.
Oh,
And so at 16, 17, I had the leadership skills to negotiate and get my teeth straightened. My mom didn't secure that. So, like, I often think sometimes about how amazing we are as dental hygienists and as persons, and we limit ourselves. But when you
hmm.
really think about my own children, I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old, and I think about my own daughter at 16 or 17 negotiating to get her own braces and working to pay for it, right? It's
Yeah.
just a phenomenal amount of resilience and strength and courage. And I think a lot of us have that. And there's so many amazing, like the name of your podcast, just thinking about the ways that we can elevate ourselves in our career. We all have it. We have the ability to be able to do that. And sometimes the signs are there, but we've ignored that for whatever
Yes.
reason that may be.
I think I am a firm believer like you are a plant. If you are put in the right soil, the right conditions, you will blossom and grow. Kind of like you said, you are part of an amazing team that allows you to get to do all the things that you get to do.
Mhm.
And I was telling you before we started the podcast, I moved up to Utah 4 years ago. I am not the same person. I am not the same hygienist. Like I have been put in just the right conditions, completely different. Like I have started speaking, writing. I'm contracting. I'm doing lunch and learns. I'm still working clinically, but mindset change is completely different compared to where I was. Where as a hygienist, I was valued as a clinical hygienist, and I needed you to stay in clinical hygiene, or I was even not really valued as a hygienist, but as
Mhm.
somebody that was just going to make the practice money and not
Yeah,
even as a person.
yeah,
And that was my experience for many years clinically, unfortunately. So
yeah.
I appreciate everything you said there at the end of like being in that right condition. I think, yeah, hygienists can be unstoppable when they are put in those right conditions to grow clinically, but grow as people. And I think that's where true professional growth happens.
Oh yeah. Like there's a whole level of freedom now.
Hmm.
Like I'm getting ready right now to go to a retreat next week called Do Life Retreat. And
Oh, yeah.
I've been gone for I've been outside of dentistry for 5 years. Um, and there's a level of peace that I have, y'all, that I just hope for so many folks.
Hmm.
'Cause when you realize that it like life and career is truly limitless and the only barrier is yourself, it changes the game. It changes the game for you completely. And there's a book that I'm actually waiting to read. It's from Mel Robbins. It's coming out this in a couple of months. It's called Let It Go or something like that. And it's just a sense of control that we feel like we must have as professionals, as women. We feel like we have to control every single thing. We need to have everything just right. And if we learn to let go and to really change our outlook, as you said, that's when the opportunities open like the floodgates. That's
Yeah.
when you more career, development opportunities. You're more joy, more peace. I'm going
Yeah.
a little bit of tangent here, but I
You're
firmly
fine. I'm here for it.
I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that. We both, Amanda and I, could not be where we are today if we didn't know how to let go and to really change our outlook on
Yeah.
life and our professional career. That's the first step.
Okay, let's talk about this. Let's dive into it for a second. What would you say your first step or the first time you remember a letting go moment? Do you have that? Can you think of one?
I was burnt out from academia in a very, very toxic work environment. For people
Mm,
who get a chance to hear my continuing education courses, you'll hear some of the things that I had to experience. That's a story for another day.
I know.
But
We all have those stories, right? We can talk.
I met some incredible hygienists that opened my eyes up to the possibility that there were other options for me that I wasn't considering. And I remember meeting a particular hygienist. His name is Elijah Desmond. When I met him and when I went back to work, I said, I can't control what's happening at this job right now. I know that there's a change that needs to happen. But for now, I'm going to work on myself and I'm going to build my confidence and I'm going to build my worthiness. So
Mm.
I read a book called Motivation Manifesto, and it came with a 10-week course. And that was the first time that I let go. That gave me the courage to start my business in 4 months and also to leave my toxic work environment.
Yes.
That was like the biggest major one that started my journey of professional and personal development.
That's mind shift. It is mindset change because it
Yeah,
wasn't like somebody offered you something on a silver platter.
no.
You were burnt out and you did it in a productive way. Like
Mhm.
you dealt with that in such a productive way.
Yeah.
Um,
But it wasn't like that at first, Amanda, because I was going to hospitals, I was going to urgent care every single week. I had gastrointestinal pain, severe gastrointestinal pain,
mm,
so bad that one particular time I share a lot for my keynote is me laying on the floor and bent over in pain. I had multiple visits, multiple ailments that could not be diagnosed. I didn't learn my lesson the moment I felt burnt out. Okay, I
mm,
want everybody to know that. Like, I was trying to fix it and not let go, where sometimes there's circumstances that you cannot change.
yeah.
And sometimes we got to come to realization the only control we have is within ourselves.
I think my let go moment excuse me, I think was like a series of moments and it is literally how I started doing everything. I was at a Pinners conference, which is Pinterest the conference. So, and I was like all the shopping, all the classes, but there was a class on how to be a content creator. And I was like, I want to know more about this. Like, what is this all about? So I was sitting in the class and I was like, okay, I'm going to start this thing. And I thought of the curvy scalar at that moment because I thought that was like a funny play on our instruments and everything. And I'm on the plus size, so I just thought it was funny. So that was kind of where I started with that, which led me to meet Joffrey, who is the owner of Hygiene Elevated, and I started doing social media for her, and then she and I started going to Under One Roof like within 3 months of knowing each other. We did a red-eye flight to Florida and we're just like, what is this? Like just being completely exposed to a whole new set of hygienists.
Yeah.
And then the next year we did Evolution. And then the next year we had a booth on the convention hall floor at Under One Roof. So it's just been like this
Oh,
growth that has come. And we're constantly in an uncomfortable place of like, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what I'm doing. It's
Yeah.
okay. You're learning. Nobody
Yeah.
does. We're all learning.
Yeah. It will change your life if you get out of your cubicle, if you get out of your operatory and go meet some folks. It changed my life. I would
Yeah.
have never crossed paths. I crossed paths with Elijah because I happened to be invited by the ADHA for a leadership meeting, and I met hygienists from all over the country.
Yeah.
Like you sometimes we need to be poured into, and the only way we can get poured into is we leave our home
Yeah.
and go hang out in spaces, right? With
And not
incredible
just
people.
virtually, not just
Yes,
attending these things virtually.
you must, because like for me, I build a life first business. I have a life first life. My children, my husband, my worship comes first. And but there are times that I need to pour into myself professionally, and it's more difficult for me to do it when I'm at home. I have to leave that
Yeah.
space where I can open myself up to being poured into. And so I think that's wonderful. Like you said, it's like meeting people, getting in spaces with other incredible people, hearing their stories, learning from them. It will elevate you in ways that you can't even imagine.
That 100% true.
Mhm,
I nothing to argue with at all on that point.
mhm,
I think Joffrey and I think when she originally kind of brought me on Hygiene Elevated before we had a podcast, she was more in the consulting realm. And
mhm.
I had never dealt with anything in the consulting, trying to make hygiene better. And the biggest problem that she would run into was hygienists were not open to hearing any sort of improvements to their clinical hygiene from another hygienist.
Yeah.
She just was facing like the dentist, like getting the dentist on board. She could do that. But the hygienists were just like, no, you can go pound sand, don't care. So it was just this like frustration, absolute frustration. And so we kind of make an analogy like hygienists are like this, we're a triangle. All the drama is happening down here in the pyramid of clinical. And I always thought it was going to be up here where like the cutthroat drama happens, up here at the higher portion of my pyramid, but that's not been my experience at all. Like everybody that's trying to get out of the op, everybody is collaborating. Everybody is trying to help each other, encourage each other, um, share resources, and not backstabbing each other.
Yeah.
Like what seems to be happening clinically, and that has blown my mind. I mean, maybe there's going to be those cases of people that don't want you to succeed or gatekeep, whatever. That's not been my experience. It's been such a positive experience. Um, so, oh, can you speak to that? Has that been your experience as well, or has there been some?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Good, good.
No, no, well, yeah, I think that you need a little bit more time. Because I feel that you and others will see that drama or the things that you were labeling happens in all aspects of dental hygiene, whether you're a clinician, whether you're an influencer, professional speaker, in due time you will have it. So I've seen it in all
Yeah,
stages. I don't think it's just clinical. What I do feel is that there is a measure of education, because I know that it was like that for me, that can only come with experience. And when I was a clinical hygienist, I didn't understand the business of dentistry.
yeah,
And
same.
until I had my own business, until I had my own team members, until I was making multi six figures in my own company and figuring out how am I going to make payroll, did I appreciate what was happening to some of what dentists are dealing with. There's a lot on their plate with having to be a clinician and also run a business.
Yeah,
How do I know that? It's because I have my own business. And when most private practices are struggling, not everyone, with building revenue, their systems are wanky and janky. The after effects is the staff becomes burnt out. They become overwhelmed. So I do feel like it's a twofold experience that can't only be handled with experience and understanding some of that, the business aspect. And then also being courageous enough to say, this private practice does not align with my core values. I
Yes.
need to figure out what my options are going to be. I have stayed in places of employment where I was like, this doesn't align with me. And I had to stay there for months, a year or more until I found the next opportunity. But I also knew that there was something else on the other side. So that's
Yes.
what I'm going to say to that.
No, I appreciate that because yes, so far my experience has been super positive. Um, and I don't know, this is a shot in the dark, but if it's kind of the old school, old guard hygienists that are doing that, but I mean, pettiness holds no age group, but I when I first started practicing hygiene, I tell this story a lot, but I worked with the most petty hygienist I have ever met in my life. She was a board examiner. She failed me on my anesthesia exam, and then I found out I was working with her as my first job clinically. And,
Mm,
as a student,
awkward.
oh, tip of the iceberg, tip of the iceberg. When I had failed, I was like, oh my gosh, like I really thought like Professor Baca and everybody like really helped me. And so I was gonna have to do the remediation. So I was already like dealing with it. But I mean, not the end of the world. I was still able to practice hygiene, just not with my anesthesia. And then when I started working with this lady, I realized within a month I probably didn't fail. I don't think I failed. She did everything possible to cause drama in the office. I had multiple flat tires when I worked at this office, razor blades in my tires.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
I'm a 24-year-old girl. You are a 50-some-year-old woman. Like, what threat am I to you? Like, just she tried to have a patient call the board on me over a 4 millimeter pocket. Like, just things like that that are just like wildly petty.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we have to trust our gut. We have to trust our gut. But what I need people to understand, it's not just old school. I mean, I talk about this on my own podcast. It's not just old school. Human beings will be human beings. People have envy, people have jealousy. We have to continuously keep our head on a swivel. So if you are deciding to become an influencer, to do anything that is outside of the normal clinical world, or whether even if you're professionally, human beings will be human beings. And that means that we need to be cautious, but it doesn't mean that we can't be open and willing to help others. We have to be
yeah.
conscious enough to see people for who they are and just pay attention, have more awareness to people's body language and how they communicate to make sure we keep ourselves safe, whether we are an influencer, whether we're in dentistry or not. But trust your gut. Like you said, there were some signs that were there. There are things that we have experienced that shown that we were around hostile individuals, and it can happen in all areas of dentistry. I can write as many patients, okay? It happens in all areas, regardless of their age. So that means that as professionals, we've got to be smart business women or men, right? We have to be aware and pay attention to details
Haters gonna hate.
every time. I mean, human nature. What you gonna do?
Yeah. No, you're true. Okay, I want to know more about your business. So you are a speaker and an influencer. You kind of mentioned a few things that you do. Tell me a little bit more about those projects.
Yeah, so I went through an iteration, several iterations of my business. When I first started, I was just speaking professionally, and I started a podcast in 2016, and it's still running. I'm very grateful to have that podcast. And so I did continuing education and speaking. And I also hosted events, CE events, and other professional development events. I've also done coaching. So when I decided to move outside of dentistry, I started working with a more industry agnostic community. and helping them with their own professional development and being able to utilize public speaking to be able to grow their business and their brand. So right now at this time, um, I realize the type of life that I truly want long term. And that means that I don't want to be shaking it all over the internet. I don't need to be shaking hands and kissing babies. I don't need to be the most popular person in dentistry or outside of dentistry. My values are different, much more different. And so I am focused on my training and helping hygienists or other professionals behind the scenes. And so my work as a leadership development corporate trainer and learning design. So I make curriculum as well within my business. And that
Oh,
is open to folks who are in dentistry and outside of dentistry. And it's a great place to be. Because I said 2 years ago, I said, I don't want to be shaking all over the internet. And I don't want my whole business based on sharing every aspect of my life on the internet as well.
yeah. I am not a dancing influencer. It's just not.
Yeah.
It's not
I
my
just want to
brand.
educate. Yeah, I just want to educate. I want to help transform people's lives. That's it. And I
Yeah.
do that by educating through speaking, training, and helping folks behind the scenes.
Love that. Love that. Okay, so you have a podcast as well,
Hmm.
Beyond the Prophy.
Hmm.
What does your platform and your format look like?
In what regard?
Like, do you get guests on? Do you just give advice from yourself? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah. You know what's so great about sharing your voice is that you can pivot and change as much as you like. So sometimes I go out there and talk crazy,
And you
press
need that.
publish,
You need some
right?
cathartic moments.
I think, right now it's just dental career motivation. I want to tell
Okay.
stories. I'll have you on the podcast. I've had Olivia. I want to be able to tell the stories because it was hearing people's stories and hearing what they went through in their professional career that helped me along the way when I was burnt out. And sometimes you have to muster up that courage to invest in that first program to get outside of
Mhm.
the house. Well, you don't do that unless you meet some folks, you hear some stories. And so that's one of the things that we do beyond the Prophy. I put Beyond the Prophy on pause for 5 years when I left dentistry. I didn't have
Okay.
an episode come out for 5 years. I stopped at episode 100, and it's remarkable that even though those years passed by, I was still having downloads. People were still sharing that podcast,
Hmm.
and it's something so valuable to see. So now I'm back with interviewing, but it's a great place to be in to know that, I'm just having conversations and sharing stories and motivating folks. And if they're interested, I'll be willing to help them behind the scenes. There's many influencers that I've worked with behind the scenes that are doing amazing in their own professional career. So I think my sweet spot is finding people at the beginning stages, giving them the tools that they need, and then watching them flourish.
Yes, that sounds perfect. I love that about the hygiene community. Just this information is always applicable. This
Mhm,
isn't something that's going to be outdated, 6 months from now. It's always going to be something there.
mhm.
And I have to completely agree with you on um, how energizing it is for my career. Just hearing the different ways that hygienists are practicing
Yeah.
and what they're doing. When Joffrey even had the idea to start the podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to run out of content so fast. And now we're just like, I don't want to say we get to pick and choose who comes on the podcast, but it's like there's so many amazing things that are happening and hygienists doing cool things outside of the op. And just walking into this space has been so inspiring to see that there's other hygienists supporting other hygienists and making these businesses and doing all these cool things. Um, to just continue to support our profession and grow other hygienists who are at that point of burnout or are looking to make that next step. So, thank you for
Yeah.
what you do. I absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just attended a CE by Angie Young, who has been in the industry for a very long time on desiccation therapy. We're not going to mention the brand that's associated with that because they need to sponsor this podcast. Okay.
Yes.
Say their
Thank you.
name. Okay, boo. We're not going to say who supported that. Okay, holler at Hygiene Elevated. Okay, sponsor an episode
We would
if
love
you want to
to.
say your brand. Okay, but shout out to Angie Young because she has shown in 40 plus years, of hygiene, how it can just, you can continue to elevate and feel excited about clinical care. So she did a CE on desiccation therapy. And I'm like, I just texted her. I was like, I just listened to the replay again. I'm ready to implement this in my clinical care and like see the result and change more lives and helping to arrest disease. And so there's so many incredible, exciting things that are available
Yeah.
to us that we can take advantage of. And like you said, like there's a countless amount of content, stories, and incredible professionals who just love this industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Anne was in our evolution class. So we are fellow alumni
Oh,
together.
wow. That's so cool. I didn't know that.
Small world, right? Small in
Mm-hmm.
the hygiene world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So transitioning a career outside of clinical dentistry can be challenging. And I think we kind of talked about like mindset being one of those things. Um, what can you like share any approaches to transitioning your own business outside of direct patient care?
So I firmly believe that we all have a personal toolbox,
Mm-hmm.
that all of our experiences, we put in a tool inside of that toolbox.
Yeah.
And we pull out that tool when we need it. So why I'm saying this is because many of us, dental hygienists, dental assistants, dentists, whatever, we often overlook transferable skills. We're always so focused on, can I clinically provide care versus how versatile are the skills that I have? So when I first started my business in 2016, I knew that I had the skill of curriculum development. And I also knew that I had a special expertise working with persons living with HIV and substance use disorder. And I was strategic enough to also see where were the gaps inside of dentistry and where could I fill it. What I needed to get over is the fact that there was no one that looked like me on stages at that time. Zero. Okay. The second thing was I needed to get over waiting for permission.
Yes.
The third was I needed to get over the fact that I was waiting for someone to give me an opportunity. All right.
Yes.
Anyone that's listening to this, I'm calling you out
Yeah.
right now.
Oral B is not going to call you up and ask you for or if you want a job. Like
No,
that's
no,
not
no, no. 'Cause I sent out, I remember specifically, I had my first speaking gig. They actually knew me. I asked to speak. I wasn't paid anything. And I remember specifically writing an email out to pretty much every dental hygiene association. And only one person responded. It was because they knew me and they told me no, uh, not at this time. I wasn't devastated. I was like, well, dang, what am I going to do? How am I going to grow this business?
Mhm.
So I said, I'll start a podcast. I didn't wait for permission. The second thing I did was I hosted my own events. And who was a feature speaker? Yours truly. And I invited some other friends to come in and speak. I didn't wait for someone to give me a platform. And most people are scared to put skin in a game. I didn't know if I was going to sell out that event. I did. I sold out my first
Mhm.
event. I was a feature speaker. I was one of the feature speaker, and I invited another amazing speaker named Edie Gibson to speak at the event. And then I did it again a few months later and doubled the amount of people that were in the room. I'm
Wow.
saying this all to say is that we're waiting for someone to give us an opportunity, and sometimes we have to create it. And sometimes we have to realize innately we are amazing. We're
Mm.
already worthy. God has already deemed us worthy. Why are we waiting for man to give us the go ahead to share our story? It's already been plugged into us. So that is one of the key things that I feel like helped me to grow my business. And then when I decided to grow it outside of dentistry, that was not a cup of tea. That was extremely hard. And I think when people look at someone like myself or others who are out there who have built businesses inside of dentistry, outside of dentistry, they feel like things are handed to you. No, there was times where I felt like quitting multiple times. There was times where I would cry. My husband had to hold me through that. There was times where I was questioning, am I worthy? Why am I dealing with this difficulty? Why is it so hard for me to build revenue? All of those things happen. What most people see are the wins. And what they have to understand is that you have to come to terms with understanding that this is beyond just the accolades, right? Is this something that's purpose driven for you? Which this is. This is purpose driven for me. It is aligned with the legacy and the core values that are important to me. And if that is so, then go ahead and take those first steps. And what folks don't realize often is that they want everything to be planned out, a long list of here's the next step and next step, and I'm just going to check the boxes. No, when you go out and you create something that's yourself, that's on your own, that's by yourself. It's like driving in fog with the high beams on. You're
That's
only
100% true.
okay? You only gonna see but a few feet ahead of you. And the only way you're gonna get to your destination is by moving forward. That's it. That is business. That is life. That is going out and creating something, and that's your own. That's going out there and doing like Amanda is doing and becoming and doing lunch and learns. It's like becoming a speaker. It's like becoming a consultant. There's a lot of unknown. But I'll tell you this, after losing my mother unexpectedly and her passing away, I
Sorry.
know that, thank you. I know that time is short. And I rather have a life of mistakes and taking risks than regrets. I don't live my life like that no more.
I think I saw somebody post yesterday, I think it was Lisa Kurbo. If you don't take risks, you're going to work for somebody who did.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, oh, that's good. That's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
good. It's
Yeah.
true. That risk is scary, but life begins on the other side of your comfort zone. And getting outside of that is really, it's scary. And I love your analogy of driving in fog, because I think we have the perspective like, oh, everybody else has it figured out. Like there's some sort of secret club that they all went to and they just get it. And I'm just struggling over here. So, I mean, perception is reality, but I think, yes, driving in the fog with the high beams on your headlights, yeah, you don't know that next step. Like you might have an idea of what you want it to look like, but you don't know how to get there at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. And I think what has been very big for me is faith.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't believe in that, and that's fine. That's on you. But I ain't get here by myself. So
Yes.
I think that having that measure of faith also allows me to let go in a way that most people may not be. But I will tell you this. Um, there are people who take risk and they crush people along the way to get to their goals.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that because eventually that's going to bite you in the butt, y'all.
Thank you for saying that. Yes.
You don't have to crush people. You don't have to tear people down. You don't have to steal from people to make it an easy, road for you. You don't have to do any of those things. You can be honest. You can have integrity. You can be loving. You can be kind. And so it's possible to do that, but it will come back to you if you try to take shortcuts in that unknown. So I just want to give that as a word of advice for those who.
That is perfect. And on that note of don't do these things, what would you say in your experience? What are some top qualities that you see in successful speakers and even entrepreneurs?
Excellence, which is one of my core values, consistent in detail. They are personable. They are engaging. What else is really important? I think also they're relatable and they believe in having true relationships, because people don't realize that relationships also is a huge deal
Yeah.
for helping you being able to grow and to do that consistently. So I would say those are like the ones that kind of stand out. But for longevity as a speaker, as an educator, as a consultant, you need to have strong operations and processes, and you need to really get a good hold of that, get organized, because revenue is needed to grow a business and to stay in business. And if you can't do that, it's a hobby.
That's I think I tell my patients this, especially my college age kids, when I ask them, what are you studying? What are you going for? And they'll say something, and I'm like, have you ever considered a business minor? No matter what you're going into, like, if I could go back to school or if I could go back in time and tell myself, minor in business, do it. That is like the one thing I wish I could go back as a freshman in college and sign myself up for some business classes, because I did not foresee the need for business at that time. But I think you're right. Like, business, it's not something that we're taught in hygiene school, like the business of hygiene, much less any concepts in business. So I think that's solid.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've spent thousands of dollars since 2016 was the first investment that I made towards my personal development. I have spent so much money now that I think about it. Like, actually, I have multiple degrees. But every single time I did, I was able to continue to grow. And so I think that there's a shift, like we were talking about mindset on the outset. There's a shift also in the level of investment. A lot of times we're willing to invest in a degree and maybe we'll get a job.
Hmm.
Just maybe. We're okay spending 50,000, 60,000 or more
Oh,
for a degree, and maybe we'll get a job or even use that degree. But we don't do that for our own personal development or even in the business side of that. And
yeah.
I think it helps you tremendously. It helps you definitely, because business skills
So
help you in life skills.
100%,
Mhm,
100%. Negotiating everything, even if it's your free braces, not free, but the braces that you negotiate with your boss. So,
mhm, mhm.
business skills. Okay, on the flip side of that, what are some mistakes that you've seen either influencers or other speakers make in their pursuits of career development?
So the first thing that comes to mind is not understanding truly who you are and what's important to you.
Mm.
Because what I've seen some do is mimic or copy others because they don't really fully understand themselves and they just so desperately want to be seen.
Yeah.
And what it does is that it will create uh, negativity for your business, for your personal brand, and also relationships in the future. So be okay in knowing that anybody can speak about Carrie's whatever, but what is your unique take and make it your own. The second thing I think that really stands out too is that sometimes there's this fear about getting visible that we tend to think that we can't do it alone. So that means that we get into business partnerships, we get into collaborations, we get into these long term deals that will not be favorable for us just because we are dying to get visible, dying to get out there. And a lot of times we haven't really thought that through. So again, it goes back down to the self-awareness. Who are you? What's really important for you? And then I want you to ask yourself, as you are pursuing the next opportunity or goal, ask yourself, does this align with my strategic plan of what I truly want? What is the foundation or the reason why I'm pursuing this? Is
Mhm.
it vain reasons or is it something that's truly going to help me? And would I want to do business if I put everything away, put everything on the side? Would I really truly want to do business with this individual. That will save you a lot of grief in getting in, or individual organization, right? That will save you a lot
Yeah.
of grief, because I've gotten into deals where I've been never paid for it after doing the services with
Oh,
organizations. Yes, with organizations, and also being in partnerships or any type of collaborations that were not aligned with the values that were important for me. So those are things that could have been avoided had I been more self-aware. So I wouldn't say that they're mistakes, they're lessons, and they could be
right.
avoided. They could be avoided, which could be costly for some of us if we decide to get into those things that may not be aligned with us.
So on that idea of having deals with brands, for those who are interested in securing sponsorships or being compensated for your posts on Instagram, for example, what tips would you offer to effectively pitch to sponsors that you're willing to share?
Do it. Reach out, find that contact information. What you waiting for?
Start it.
And
Start it.
at the end of the day, you got to build community. So you have to understand, like with any sort of business deal, you're talking with someone and they want to know what's in it for them. So what do you have to offer? It's not just what's the money that they're getting. What do you have to offer?
Yeah.
And so I think, again, number one, if you're really, really uncertain about building your brand, you need to hire a coach. Okay. Because doing Google, using YouTube, using Facebook groups will help you but so far. Every person that I know that's making multi six figures or seven figures or more invested in a coach. So at some point you're going to stall. I was stalling at the cusp. I was at 70K in my business. I was at the cusp of six figures. I had to hire a coach to reach my first six figures in business. So I need y'all to understand at some point in time, free 99 can do so much. ChatGPT can do so much. You've got to get into some of the processes and understanding by hiring a coach. But I would say that's the biggest thing. Pitch them. See
What
what they
would you, okay, sorry. I want to make sure that we finish on time for you, but this conversation is so good. What
say.
would you say to look for in a coach?
Okay, so the coach you choose should be based on what are your goals. So every year I plan my goals out a year in advance. This week for my coaching clients, we had our strategic plan and I planned out the entire year. I know what I'm doing Q1, 2, 3, and 4 and for the following year. And so what I advise you to do is sit down, alone time. I don't want your kids. I don't want your dog. I don't want your nieces, nephews making a whole bunch of noise. If you need I have rented a hotel, gone to a hotel for a day away from my family. I love them, but I needed to get some organization, right?
Yeah.
Every person you see successful is organized. Number one, okay? So every business that you see, big name business brands, which we're not going to name right now because they're not sponsoring this podcast, they are organized. There's systems and there's processes. So you need to get clarity on where do you want to be? What goals are necessary that must be reached for the next year? Based on those goals should be the type of coach that you're hiring. Not who's popular, because the coaches that I had who have been amazing, the one that got me to my first six figures is not one of them big name coaches. And if you need a referral, I'll be happy to refer you. Okay. Like she is absolutely amazing. And so a lot of times people go with who's the most popular. It's not those ones that made the difference for me in my life. It's the ones that are relatively unknown that have the time and energy to look with their own eyes, not with team members.
Mm-hmm.
It's the actual person, the CEO that owns it and has looked at my whole business and helped me transform it completely. So I would say knowing who you are, knowing where you're going, and then look at the receipts. Look at are they going to be the ones that are specifically working with you? Because a lot of us who are beginning in our career or beginning in our business need eyes directly on your stuff. Like tomorrow, I have a coaching call. I'm doing a business audit for another hygienist. So she wrote out her mission, her vision, her services, the pricing for her services. And I'm doing a full audit of her entire business at an accessible rate that people are charging $10,000, $15,000 for. When you're just starting and you're really trying to build up, you need someone's eyes on your business, not with a generic cookie cutter approach, but more customization. So look for that customization, because that's what made a change for me. Look for the customization and the time. How much time are they going to give you to be able to work with you? I think those were the most important things, because I've hired coaches that were not good for me.
Yeah.
And the biggest part was there wasn't any customization. I was being treated like a number, and I need that personalization. I need that personal time with my coach. I would say that's the biggest thing.
That's huge. That's absolutely huge. Jasmin, this is the best, one of the absolute best conversations, and I learned so much, and now you have my mind like spinning. So we like to finish up the podcast with 2 questions.
Okay.
So the first one, looking back in your career, what are some things that have taken you so long to figure out that you wish you would have figured out sooner?
That when someone tells me no, or they don't like me, that form of rejection does not mean that I'm not worthy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big old lesson right there.
That is a big lesson. That's
And
some thicker skin.
oh man. And if someone tells me no, that may also mean not right now. So keep working in the lab, still refine yourself,
Mm-hmm.
get stronger, get better, keep serving with excellence. And they may or may not come around. And when they do come around, the price is higher.
Yes.
Yesterday's price ain't today's price, as Fat Joe said.
Okay, last question. If you could go back in time as a new grad, what advice do you wish you could give yourself?
Oh, man. Mm. I would probably say to myself, learn business earlier, because I would have approached so many conversations differently with dentists. I would have also come to them and let them know what I wasn't going to deal with sooner.
Yeah.
Because I would have been more like, I can handle difficult conversations now with no problem at all. And I wish I did that sooner, because again, we're working with human beings. And if I understood more of what the dentist needs would have been, I could have been so much of a stronger hygienist for them. I was an excellent hygienist, but I would have been able to be more of a producing hygienist, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that I would have told myself that, because I remember in school, we had maybe like one chapter that was like 4 or 5 pages in our ethics book or something like that, that had the business of dental hygiene in it. We didn't even look at that.
I don't know that our book had that. My program was so public health focused. That's
Mm,
all I remember. I don't remember anything at all. I mean, I could be wrong, but I remember nothing of the business of hygiene or dealing with insurance or having those conversations with a dentist at all. At
no,
all.
no,
So,
no. I think that's a big thing that for me. I think that would have changed the game for me.
yeah.
I would
No,
be
I
even light
agree.
years further if I knew that earlier now than never now.
Coulda,
Mhm.
woulda, shoulda. Well,
Yeah.
Justin, this has been a phenomenal conversation, and I appreciate your time so much. I'm very excited that we got to connect. So we'll be in touch.
Yes. Thank you
But
so much for having me. I appreciate it.
where can our listeners find you if they are interested in your services or having you speak?
You can find me on LinkedIn, and it's under Jasmin Haley. I'm a Jasmine without an E. You can go to Beyond the Prophy on Instagram. Please try out LinkedIn. Don't send me a friend request on Facebook. It will be declined.
I also don't friend people on Facebook. I'm like, no.
Yeah, we're done. We're done with Facebook. But if you can go to jasminhaley.com or beyondtheprophy.com, reach out to me, send a contact information. If there was a resource I shared that you want me to share, I'm an open book. So reach out to me there.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jasmin.
Thanks for having me.